And so the purpose of this particular academy, and it's one of our signature programs, but the purpose of this academy is to, again, provide that access and exposure for students who are interested in the business side of agriculture. And so
hello, meat folks. Welcome back to the MeatsPad podcast. It's your happy and hungry host, Phil Bass. I have an individual here I met a couple of years ago. Derris, we met in Reno, I believe, for the very first time. Is that right? Okay. Mm-hmm. And had some really cool conversation. We'll get into the conversation that we initially had, but even more so here at the Reciprocal Meat Conference in Oklahoma City this year, Derris has brought to the forefront an association that is we're trying to partner a lot more with, and I'm learning a lot more, and I'm excited about this. I'm loving the different ideas that we can both share across disciplines here, and so Derris, first off, welcome to MeatsPad.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome, and tell us a little bit about the MANRRS. The MANRRS Association, if you will.
Yeah, so MANRRS stands for Minorities in Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Related Sciences. It's an organization that's near and dear to my heart. I've been a member of the organization since 2001 when I started my collegiate journey at Tuskegee University, and continue to be a member today. I like to say that, or attribute a lot of my career path to the doors, opportunities, and access that MANRRS has provided for me, and it continues to provide for thousands of students across the country. So we are a national organization. We have chapters across the country and also have international chapter in Ghana, as well as some territorial chapters in Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. And so we've expanded our reach, started in 1984 on the campus of Michigan State University. In 1985, some like-minded students at the Pennsylvania State University had an organization called Minorities in Agriculture. And so those two organizations kind of coalesced, and by 1989, what we now know as MANRRS was formed.
Yeah. So okay. So let's talk a little more about what it is that it provides to its membership, and especially for those out there that might have interest in it. How can they engage?
So when I boil it down, I always say MANRRS provides access and opportunity.
Yeah.
And so the intellectual capacity and the ability of our students to learn, that is kind of goes without questioning. But when I realize what some of the barriers are in terms of entry into the agriculture, natural resources, and related science space, a lot of that has to do with just access or the lack thereof, or the lack of exposure to opportunities. And so the biggest thing that I think MANRRS provides to its members and memberships is the access and opportunity to participate in this space, and also gives students the platforms that they need to put their skills on display. So they work very hard in their academic pursuits and in hopes of ultimately landing a career, but a lot of times they just don't know where they're ultimately going to land. And so through various impactful programs, strategic investments, and scholarships and other things, MANRRS helps to kind of solidify that pathway and to kind of give them the runway to take off.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see the leadership development opportunities which are involved, and you used a very specific word, the exposure part, and I love that. There's no question anybody listening to this podcast knows that we need more people working in agriculture, and especially in the meats world right now, which you and I live in, and exposing folks that maybe otherwise didn't even know this was an opportunity to a really cool and a potential career path, right? So yeah, and tell us a little bit more about, there's one particular program that you mentioned in your talk, and for those who didn't get a chance to listen to Derris's talk, first off, you're an amazing speaker, by the way. Okay, we will have recordings of the talks from the Reciprocal Meat Conference at some point on meatscience.org website. But you mentioned a program called the SMART I'm just calling it smart program, I guess.
Smart
You can tell
Academy,
me,
yeah,
tell me
yeah.
more. Let's talk a little bit more about that, because I get really excited when we start bringing in the business side of things into agriculture.
Absolutely. And so the SMART Academy is an acronym for Sales, Marketing, Ag, Retail, and Technology. And that was actually the brainchild of our CEO, Miss Ebony Weber, who actually has a business background. And so the purpose of this particular academy, and it's one of our signature programs, but the purpose of this academy is to, again, provide that access and exposure for students who are interested in the business side of agriculture. And so a lot of us are involved in the production side or the research and development. But ultimately, somebody has to sell, market those products, come up with creative ways of penetrating different markets and things like that. And so the Sales, Marketing, Ag, Retail Technology Academy, or the SMART Academy for short, is designed to provide that. And so working with top-tier companies that are involved in commodity trading, that are involved in sales, marketing of commodities, and further processed or value-added products, really just giving our students some exposure to the opportunities beyond the farm gate, or beyond the ranch, or beyond the fields, and how they can really turn those products into profits and revenue streams and enterprises for whether they be entrepreneurs themselves, or if they're working for some of the larger and multinational companies that we tend to work with.
I remember Dr. Gary Smith saying, and I've said this before on this podcast, but I remember him saying, agriculture without profit incentive is merely gardening. And we have to figure out the business side of things.
Absolutely.
And I recall you talking about how maybe rubber boots and hard hats isn't for everybody, but there is a spot for everybody within this business, and this sounds like the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things that we just completed the Gate to Plate program with AMSA and MANRRS, Cargill, and Taco Bell, and so that kind of is an example of how you can kind of find your way in agriculture. And so we started off on the ranch, where some of the students were there sorting cattle and kind of selecting cattle and things like that, and we ended up in a Taco Bell R&D kitchen where students had the opportunity to create some of the novel products, and to me that kind of resembles the SMART Academy, or what your point in terms of not everybody's going to be boots on the ground. They don't want to be knee deep in cow manure or in their hands in the dirt, but they still want to participate in the industry, and there is a space for them in the industry. A lot of our students see themselves as the Wall Street type, and if you think about the Chicago Mercantile Exchange and all of those things, all that is just the livestock version of Wall Street, and so it's very
It's
important.
the literal stock market,
Right. Yeah. And so the literal stock market, the livestock market. So exactly, and so it's very important that again we provide the opportunities for students to see themselves in those spaces as much as we allow them to see themselves in the plants and in the fields.
Yeah, we have those that numbers come easy to them, and they can see patterns in a scatter plot or something. And oh my gosh, what a great opportunity for folks with those interests.
Absolutely. And so again, we're working on identifying some founding partners for that particular program. And so again, for those in the audience or are listening, if you want further information, you can look at MANRRS.org or contact our CEO, Miss Ebony Weber. But again, looking for founding partners, mentors, leaders, supporters that are again helping us, that would like to help us to get that program off the ground. So again, we're hoping to launch our first cohort of that program in May of 2025.
Well, you're a meat scientist, so you probably don't need a lot of help from me, but if I can help in any way in the merchandising side, I'd be more than happy to join up and collaborate.
The more the merrier.
Well, and I want to shift gears now because you're a meat scientist, and it goes back to our initial conversation. I have no idea how we got to where we were in that conversation, other than the beer led us that way.
I was going to say we were at the bar.
Yeah, so. but you were telling my students and I about how you go about teaching meat science and really the entire meat animal life cycle using the rabbit. So describe that to our audience, if you will.
Yeah, I can kind of consider myself a non-traditional agriculturalist, non-traditional meat scientist, because I didn't come from the typical background that a lot of meat scientists kind of, the path that a lot of them take. And so when I think about meat science, I maybe think a little bit outside the box, but a lot of our students, and I think this is the case across the country, fewer and fewer of our students are coming from that traditional background, fewer are coming from a farming background, a livestock production background. And so when we start thinking about training the contemporary student, a lot of times cows and pigs and things like that, one, it takes a lot of resources, and two, they can be intimidating if it's not something that you've grown up around. On the second hand, there's also, you may have your peers who did grow up on a big cattle ranch and things like that, and so in some of those classes they can tend to be dominating because they know some of those things like the back of their hand. And so we actually developed what we call the Farm to Fork Rabbit program, and we started it out actually it started out as an international engagement in which we had the goal of teaching international livestock production to some folks in Guatemala, to some women in Guatemala in the Western Highlands. And we got down there, we again, typical mindset, we were going to show them how to raise cattle and just change their whole life. And we got there and realized that they didn't have the water resources, and again, some of those same barriers that prevent even academic institutions from having large farms are the same challenges they face. And so rather than being dismayed, we kind of went back to the drawing board, myself and Dr. Jessica Graves, and we basically came up with our rabbit model. And so we started out with our own money out of our own pockets, went to Lowe's, bought some 2x4s, some wire, and bought a buck and 3 does. And we told the students that they had to build a rabbit hutch, they had to feed them, and then basically at the end of that semester, we made rabbit tacos. And so that basically became, is a running joke, but the students love it, and they always ask, well, how do you get the students to eat the rabbits at the end of the semester? I said, my one rule is they can't name them at the beginning of the semester. And so as long as they don't name them, they're usually okay. But that really does provide us with the opportunity to show or demonstrate the entire life cycle of a production animal in a single semester, right? So we can basically build a hutch, breed the buck to the does, and we'll have a kit of baby rabbits, in a couple of 4 weeks or so, and then they'll raise those, and again, at the end of the semester, they have a product that they can actually harvest. But it empowers the students to make management decisions, breeding decisions, nutritional decisions, culling decisions. You got some moms aren't producing, or you got some males who may not breed well. So again, you have to make those real life decisions, and then ultimately, again, you can transition and extrapolate that to larger livestock models. So it's just a micro model that kind of levels the playing field amongst the students, but also gives them, again, a tangible example of the full life cycle, the full farm to fork life cycle of a production animal.
I say it when you're not in the room. I'm going to say it while you're in the room. That's a brilliant idea. I mean, you're showing the entirety of it. You're showing the good and the challenging parts of agriculture with a relative. I'm going to guess it's a relatively low cost input. Right. Yeah. And you're taking this model, and you've already alluded to it, but it's an international program that you're a part of. Tell me a little bit about how you are going out and sharing that information with those who need protein in their diet, and how did you get involved?
Yeah, so we consider this a train the trainer model. Yeah. And so again, the stateside component of that is when we the students enroll in the class, usually in the fall semester, and we'll train them up on, again, rabbit husbandry, how to raise the animals, how to properly take care of them, and then how to humanely harvest those animals. And then we export that knowledge. So our students then go on a study abroad trip to Guatemala each year over their spring break. So they dedicate their spring break to going and then exporting that training to the target populations in the Western Highlands. And so when we initially got there, in the community that we initially surveyed, they are typically having households. It's a very matriarchal society, and so they have households in the 10 to 12 person range. Wow. And we did a survey and found that they were basically able to feed that entire household a animal-based protein meal 1.1 times a week. And so that's not 1 day a week, but that's one meal out of the quote-unquote 21 meals you would have in a week. And so, again, through teaching them how to raise rabbits, empowering them with the skill set, showing them how to build hutches, do all those types of things. We went back several years later and actually found that intake has gone up to about 4.4 times a week.
Wow.
And so about a 400% increase. And not all of them are consuming rabbits. Some of them are consuming the rabbits. Some of them are raising the rabbits, selling the rabbits, and using that revenue to buy beef, pork, chicken,
Sure.
fish, and other protein sources. And on top of that, being very resourceful. A lot of textiles and things that we purchase come from Guatemala. They're very resourceful, very good at textiles and things like that. And so we actually, they've actually educated us and kind of reciprocated that, and we've actually learned how to tan those rabbit hides and actually use those byproducts as well. And so they're making, purses and little baby booties and all kind of stuff out of the rabbit hides. And it's just kind of a very sustainable model.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, a low input model. And again, rabbits breed like rabbits, and so it's been fun.
They are a prolific species, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Well, and the other thing that just really caught me, I mean, the brilliance of using the rabbit instead of, say, a pig or chicken, is they're herbivores that they grow on grass. Mm-hmm. Chicken needs some actual grain or something in their diet. And yeah, I'm sure that the rabbit will grow much more if you can supplement them, but they can just grow on leaves.
Yeah.
It's an amazing animal.
And not only that, but their feces is actually an amazing fertilizer.
Yeah.
And so what we've seen, again, talking about the sustainability of the model, is that, again, the folks in Guatemala and my students here stateside, they've done things like created different fertilizers. Or we had one lady in Guatemala who was basically had a rabbit hutch here, and next to the rabbit hutch was her cilantro field. And so she was essentially using the rabbit fertilizer or feces to fertilize her cilantro field. And I mean, she had a huge cilantro crop. And so, just seeing the full circle sustainability of the model has been really, really rewarding.
This is clearly thinking outside the box, man. I mean, I grew up eating rabbit. It wasn't a regular occurrence, but it was the old Italians that I lived in and around with. They appreciated it. Not something you run into very often, though. And so you looked at a completely different species from our very traditional ones. You're teaching the whole life cycle of a meat animal, and now you're also exporting that information and knowledge to areas of the world that truly need protein in their diet to thrive, right?
And one of the more rewarding things that I get out of it is seeing the students as practitioners.
Yeah.
So again, a lot of times students see themselves and they think, once I get my degree, I'll be a scientist, right? And I like them to think that you're a scientist right now in the pursuit of your degree. And the degree is not going to change whether or not you are a scientist or not. Either you are or you're not, right? And so I when you see that they realize that when they are able to export that knowledge, because they put together all the training materials, they put together all the resources that we hand out, or all the workshops that we actually administer in Guatemala, and so then they are very proud of the products that they ultimately deliver to the target audiences, and they come back feeling more empowered in terms of their ability to be a scientist. And so whether or not that makes them study harder when they get back, I don't know, but I do know that their confidence and their in themselves and in their pursuit of their career, they come kind of with more resolve in terms of what they ultimately want to do. I've had several students return back to Guatemala on their own dime and work with our in-country partners for an extended period of time because they want to follow up and do more. And so again, I think we really pride ourselves in training globally minded students, and then also, again, like I said, it's just rewarding to see that light bulb go off and they realize that I truly am a scientist in the midst or in the pursuit of a degree, as opposed to someone who's trying to become a scientist when I get a degree. So.
Yeah, well, and I've said this before. I've done an interview with Dr. Amy Seward, and about giving back and serving others. And there's something innate in the human experience that it makes one feel good to give back. It builds your confidence, like you said. It gives you purpose, and that's really important. The other thing too, though, that, Francisco and I say this all the time on this podcast is, if you can go outside of your little world, you experience other places in the world, other cultures, you're going to learn something. You're going to make different connections in your brain that you're not going to get by just kind of staying in your little community, right?
Absolutely, yeah. That's been, to me, I always tell the students, I learn something every year that we go back. It's actually one of the events that we do, or one of the activities that we do, is we also always go to a local slaughterhouse on Market Day, which is happens to be Wednesday in this community. And so 3 a.m. in the morning, we get up and we go and watch them harvest the animals that are ultimately going to be in the market that day.
Wow.
And so what's really cool about it is a lot of times the students that are in attendance or are on the trip have taken my meat science class on campus, and they get to see all the hoists and the saws and the automated equipment, semi-automated, that we have on campus. And then we go, and these 60, 70-year-old guys slinging an axe, and he doesn't miss a beat. I mean, he'll split that thing better than I can split it with my Jarvis Buster saw. And he's slinging a hatchet. And so it's awesome, because I tell the students, when the equipment breaks down, when you get frustrated because your brand new bandsaw's not working and things like that, just think about how resourceful these individuals are. So I every time I go, I learn a new skill, a new way to make a cut, a new way to do something that I may not have done known before. And so you got to be a lifelong learner, and then understand that there is, again, reciprocity when you're not there just to teach, but you're also there to learn. And whether that's actual technical skills, or if that's just some cultural competence, whatever it is, you should add to your skill set and add to your overall capabilities. And I think 99.9% of the students, and even the faculty that go, come away with that experience.
Yeah, just because maybe they don't have a degree doesn't mean they don't have something to teach
absolutely.
you, right?
Yeah, I learned so much from those guys. I mean, they teach you how to do everything.
Yeah. All right, last question. I like to ask all the folks I'm interviewing is, how'd you become Dr. Derris Burnett?
Well, that's an interesting
and you have a cool story, so I want you to tell this.
I'll tell the story. So again, I'm a city kid from Denver, Colorado, born and raised, and so I grew up. My mom let me have. I always had animals, so my mom let me have snakes and alligators or caimans. I didn't have any alligators, but I had caimans. I had iguanas, water dragons, all kind of stuff. And so I grew up wanting to be the crocodile hunter. And so here comes college, and applied to several schools. I got into Colorado State University. I think they gave me a $2,500 scholarship. I got a scholarship from Tuskegee, which was a full ride, and so Mom made the decision, hey, we're taking you to Tuskegee. And so that was probably one of the best decisions that she made for me, or we made together. But anyway, ended up at Tuskegee. They said pick a major, and so as we go down the list of majors, I saw animal science, and again, crocodiles are animals. I wanted to be the crocodile hunter, so I decided, hey, I'm gonna check this one. And so little did I know that animal science meant dealing with agriculture, livestock species, and things like that. And so I was ready to change my major to wildlife biology so I could pursue my dream of becoming the crocodile hunter. But I had a professor, and this is kind of a testament to the importance of passionate educators who really kind of let you get your hands dirty again and be a practitioner. And so Dr. Noble took us to the goat farm, and our first activity in Intro to Animal Science lab was castrating goats. And I don't know what it was about castrating goats, but instead of getting 1 degree in animal science, I ended up getting 3, which included my doctoral degree. And so
thank you, Dr. Noble.
Yes, sir. I appreciate Dr. Noble for that Newberry knife. And so it was a great time. And he didn't just demonstrate it; he made us get down in there and get it done. And so it was an awesome experience. And so again, a lot of people ask me what I do as a meat scientist, and I say, well, in terms of animal science, some people get to breed them and feed them, some get to graze them and raise them, and as a meat scientist, I get to kill them and grill them. And so that's my job in a nutshell, and that's how I became Dr. Burnett.
There it is. Well, man, I really appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate all the giving back that you do. I appreciate you bringing MANRRS to our attention. We need this. It's good to get different perspectives, especially some of the folks that maybe don't know that animal agriculture is a career path, and you're doing that, man. I appreciate that.
Well, I like to say that, meat science and muscle biology is how I make a living.
Yeah.
But MANRRS is what gives me life, and so it's never a heavy lift for me to talk about MANRRS. Again, I attribute a lot of my career path to my involvement in MANRRS. I consider myself both a benefactor and a beneficiary because MANRRS gave so much to me. But to your point, now I have the opportunity to give that back to the now generation of students. So we don't call them the next generation; we call them the now generation because they are solving problems and taking care of issues right now. So it's easy work for me.
All right. Well, let's keep this conversation going sometime.
Absolutely.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you.